Okay. All right. So now does anyone have any questions on the pin? All right. And just like uh sometimes like in this case this piece is defended by this pawn, right? But it's still a pin because if this piece moves then I can just take the queen. All right. So this is a pretty common pin, like bishop to g5. And remember in the opening we played black played a bad move, bishop to d6. He moved his bishop before his knight. Now here, if what black already had d6, right? He could move his bishop to g4, and then that gives a pin on the knight and the queen. All right. But now we'll look at bishop to e3. Now this is like a bit of a more advanced move. So what this does is this attacks this bishop, right? So now this bishop can run, right? It can go back, it can move over here or something. It can get protected like d6 or b6 or queen e7, or it can capture our bishop. And now the best move for black is just to run with the bishop, and we'll see why. So let's say he plays d6 or b6. Let's say he plays d6. Now the thing is, we can take his bishop, he'll take back, and now he has something called doubled pawns. So what are doubled pawns? So doubled pawns are when there are two pawns in the same file. So remember, a file is a column. So there's the A column, B column. We call that the A file, B file. And there's the rows are the rank. So eighth row, which is this, is the eighth rank. Third row, third rank. Like that. So now there's two pawns in the same file, right? In this case, it's the C file. The reason that's bad is because let's say this pawn, like it can't move ahead of this pawn. So it's like they can't work together. So that's why double pawns are bad. Now let's say he got protected, or he could take or run, right? He could also block actually. But blocking is usually not a good move. So let's say he plays the knight here to block. Now what we can do is can anyone find the best move actually? Rakesh? Yeah, so what would that be in notation? Okay, so I think you're talking about this pawn. So how we take this pawn is knight takes e5. So we say the knight, and then we say takes if we're capturing, right? So in this case, we're capturing something. We say the square that we're capturing. So that's e5. So knight takes e5. And yeah, that's the best move. Because in this position, this knight was guarding this pawn. Now, uh, now this knight moves here, so this nothing is guarding this pawn, and we can just take it. Okay, so now we looked at if you for bishop e3 if you play d6 to protect or knight d4 to block. Let's say you take. So takes, you might face this a lot of times. Now your only move is takes, right? You have to take back, or else you'll just be down a full pawn or full bishop. But now you might think, why is this good? We have doubled pawns, right? The thing is, doubled pawns, when they're in the center, which is the D file or the E file, are always really good. So it's like an exception to the rules. There's always exceptions to the rules, right? So imagine there's two pawns on the C file in the previous example, right? Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, right here. So there's two pawns on the same C file. Is the C file in the center? No, right? If these four squares are the center, right? Then That means that the D and E files are the center files. So since these two pawns are on the C file, they're not good. They're not in the center. So now we saw bishop takes e3, f takes e3. These two pawns, they're doubled pawns, but they're in the middle. And the reason that's good is because, let's say black plays here, it's developing his rook. Then we can play something like d4. And that is the next step of our plan. So now let's just review what we've had so far, because our class is coming to a close. So we start with a pawn move, right, into the center. So just trying to gain control of some of the central squares, right? So in this case, e4 gains control of e4 and d5. Then we bring out the knight. So we can either bring out both the knights and then the bishop, or we can bring out one knight and then one bishop and then a knight again. Depends on your preference. In this case, let's say we brought out two knights. Then we bring out one bishop. So after we bring out at least one bishop, our next step is to castle, right? Two squares to the right, and then the rook jumps over the king. Then we have developing the other bishop, right? So now this bishop has more scope. So now this bishop gets developed. And now the final part, let's say he just took, right, is something called a central pawn break. So once you play this move, this is where the opening ends. Okay, so and now the middle game starts. So what the central pawn break is when you move one of the E or D file pawns into one of these squares, right? Remember, in the beginning you already had one pawn there. But now you're trying to get both pawns in the middle. The reason that this is good is because it gives you a lot of control in the game, right? You have your bishop attacking this square, the knight attacking here and here, this knight attacking here and here, the queen attacking here and here. There's a lot of like control on the center four squares, right? And the reason you want that, you're building all of this just to play this central pawn break. And this is very important because it'll set the stage for the middle game. So basically, as the game goes on, you're just trying to build your advantage, right? In the opening, what you're trying to do is get the first and best central pawn break. Just in this case, we got d4 before our opponent even developed his bishop. So that means we're almost clearly better already. And then in the middle game, we'll learn more about how to build an advantage as well. But let's just review what we've learned so far. So we've got a central pawn break, right? And the reason we do that is because, let's say, okay, takes, right? The reason we do this is because, once again, now all four of the squares in the center, we have full control, right? There's not a single pawn for black in these two squares. These four squares, I mean. So that means we have a clear advantage. That's just like an indicator for having a clear advantage, alright? Okay, so now we have the central pawn break. This also gives us something called space. And space in chess is really important. So space is like how far your pawns are advanced. So you can see that all of black's pawns, they're in the starting position, right? But for us, we have two pawns in the fourth rank. They're advanced, right? They each moved two squares forward. So the more space we have with our pawns, that means the more room our pieces have to move. So you can see this bishop has no room. This rook has like almost no room. This queen has almost no room. So like you can see how his pieces are really cramped. But our pieces, this queen can come out here and then start attacking. Then this rook can come out here and start attacking. This knight just needs to move and this rook can start attacking. So you can see like why space is extremely important. It allows you to get a good attack in the later game, like in the middle game. So that's why central pawn breaks are good. They give you lots of space and they cramp your opponent's position. They give you control of the center. So that is what the opening is about. So let's just go back here. So first we start with a central pawn move, right? We move a pawn into the center to get control of one of these four squares: e4, d4, d5, e5. So now in this case we decided to choose e4. Next, we bring one knight into the center. In this case, knight f3. We're attacking this pawn, and we're giving our knight like a wider range of squares to move to. Then we bring our other knight, or we can also bring our bishop, like bishop to c4. Now, both of these moves are good. You can choose either. Next, we have, in this case, we chose to play both our knights into the middle first. Next, we bring out one bishop. Then, does anyone remember the move here? What we should try and do? Rakesh? Yeah, castle, right? So now we castle. Next, what we do is we try and develop our other bishop. So we have this bishop on c1 that we're trying to develop. And finally, we try and get a central pawn break. And the central pawn break, the reason we do this, does anyone remember? Zane? Exactly. That's the main thing, right? We get space. And space, that makes our opponent's position really cramped, right? None of his pieces can move very freely. In our position, all our pieces can move a lot more. Alright, so I hope you guys understood the opening. So I'm gonna be sharing this two videos with you. So yeah, I'll just in case you have any questions, you could just refer back to the video, and then I think you'll have all your questions answered. But does anyone have any questions right now before we end the class? No? Alright, so I'll see you guys next Friday. Bye.